please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Hello and welcome to Commodity Champions, your weekly dose of what's brewing in the commodity space. I'm Manisha Gupta. Well, technology should be welcome in a country where farm incomes are low. Nearly 1/3 of those are in the non-agriculture households, yet those actually using these technologies are less than 1%. In agriculture, innovation is still bottled up at the top rather, because most land plots are too small, hurting long-term productivity growth. Nearly 90% of farmers are small and marginal. The average size of farm is now just about 1.15 hectares, according to the Agricultural Consensus 2016. 85% of land ownership is of less than 2 hectares and account for 45% of the total crop area. By contrast, only 5% of farmers operate on land parcels larger than 4 hectares. How technology can help to minimize crop disaster is a question that we are asking our guests today. It can also help farmers improve method of farming through innovative and efficient agriculture methods. Crop management is yet another thing, horticulture, opportunities in agriculture sector, weather-related information, advice of experts, quality of soil, farming and use of fertilizers, and also farm apps are some of the things that the agriculture sector is now looking at quite closely. Let's get in our guest then, who would tell us on how technology is making a penetration into the Indian markets. And to discuss that further, we have with us Mugilan Thiru Ramasamy. He is CEO at Skylark Drones. We also are joined by Ravi Agarwal, who is MD at Kisan Craft. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. And Mugilan, coming to you first, the whole discussion really is about the farm and the technology. This is one sector that has not seen much automation. This question really is to you, Ravi. What is your experience been? How much penetration have you seen into the markets? And the whole drone technology clearly is very new to all over India. When it comes to the farm sector, this really is a new one for this one.
Thank you for the question, Manisha. So, idea is, like you're right. So, farming is, one of the least technology penetration sectors, right? Right from the fact that individual farmers are still using a lot of manual methods, from yield estimates for measuring yield, right from figuring out their individual plant populations and what is the right amount of pesticides to be used, etc. Right. So farming has employed mostly larger sections of our population and been extremely less productive because of lack of use of technology. So coming into drones the larger concept of digital agriculture itself has helped farmers and other stakeholders in the agricultural ecosystem really understand right from yield, getting best amount of yield estimates for their farms, have better farming records per se, and helps other seed companies really distribute their seeds more efficiently. So it actually helps a lot of people across the ecosystem, right?
So, my next question really is that in a country where we still are looking at minimum support prices, we still are looking at farm loan waivers, and of course the kind of land holdings that we have, what is your sense on how affordable is a technology like this, and what all states, what all companies are you working with when it comes to drones as a technology?
We are working with a bunch of from agricultural companies and the government. Right. So with respect to agricultural companies, we are working with some of the largest seed companies in India today. Right. We help them, bring transparency in their farming operations. So through our, drones and technology, we are able to tell people what is the exact yield possible from a particular acre of farm. Right, with respect to corn production or with respect to rice production or anything of that of that sort. Right. We also try to help the companies with better usage of pesticides and figuring out where pesticides can be used, what are the plant health at different regions. So this all comes under the basket of digital agriculture, right? So the companies get a lot of insights about their farming operations, turn it to the government side. The government also can figure out what is the best, what are the, on a macroscopic level, what are the best yields for a district, or what are the cropping patterns for the entire district, right, which is possible. So we are also working with Karnataka government with this regard, right, trying to pilot our technology for a district per se.
So also tell us on how accessible this is and how affordable is this technology right now, because while we do understand that there are companies promoting it, as you mentioned, but how are you making inroads with it? How long have you been at it? How is the geographical distribution really, and what all crops are you concentrating it at this point in time?
Okay, so with respect to drones hardware per se, it is the prices are falling as we speak. However, this currently it's affordable to companies in who do agriculture for a business, but for an individual farmer per se, it is not yet affordable. But we expect the trend to change in the near future. 3 years down the line, drones will be as cheap or expensive as a smartphone. Right, and I think cloud-enabled drones will start, occupying skies over large pieces of land, and individual farmers will truly get benefit of, corrective actions that they can take to make sure that their farming operations are run smoothly.
All right, it's nice to know that the drones in next 3 years will be as cheap as smartphones, though some of the smartphones are not as cheap. But coming back to drones really, what exactly are you using drones for right now, especially in the agriculture space? And what all can the drone do when it comes to agriculture sector? I mean, we do understand that you're using it for soil, you're using it for cropping, you also are using it as in sense of watching the crop growth here, etc. But what major inroads have you made in all of this?
So when you think about drones, think about something like, things which have enabled reach for a particular farmer or a person right there, right? So when you talk about drones in the use cases in the agricultural sector, we are talking about right from yield estimates, plant counting as a problem. Today we can individually count all the corn plants which are there in an acre of field, right, with 95% accuracy. We can talk about how best you can spray pesticides on each of these plants. We can detect areas where we need pesticide application, and the drones can actually do that, right? And we can talk about health of individual plants and figure out which plants are actually healthy, which plants are not. So we can also talk about how best if there's a flood, we can talk about how much water has given damage to the particular plants, right, with respect to flooding. So this gives a entire claim management system for the agricultural insurance companies. So we can talk about a whole list of use cases which are possible just because of the fact that drones can be flown anytime anybody wants, right? It gives power to the particular farmer or the user of it.
Well, but for the longest time, the agriculture did not really attract any attention. But recently, we have seen startups come into this space, whether it's technology or whether it's food processing, etc. A lot of technology now seems to be being used. But as we look at this, what is your stand on the government funding, policies, resources, etc.? Is it enough, would you say, or is much more really still desired in this space, especially when it comes to technology?
Well, from a policy standpoint, I think the government is trying. From a drone policy standpoint, we are working with the government closely today to actually make it fruitful in the near future. I guess we will have more clarity in the coming months with respect to regulations, with respect to drone policy. But otherwise, from a funding standpoint, I think government can, encourage use of technology across sectors. I mean, across agricultural as a sector. So we are working with the Karnataka government. I think more other state governments can take a more proactive stance of, figuring out, helping the farmer, getting better yield estimates, helping, helping the farmer actually get better claims for insurance, right? So today, government has a lot of lag in the insurance claim management and things like that. So by using these kind of technology, by encouraging use of these kind of technology, government actually benefits. They can, direct funds to the right people who actually need them, right? So that's something government can start doing more proactively today. But there are, like you're right, so there have been a lot of agricultural startups popping up to solve this problem, and that's actually a very good news to the country. I think 5 to 10 years down the line, agriculture will be a great sector for everybody to pop in and solve.
Well, we wish that too. But, before we let you go, tell us also, is your company the only one who is or has the technology in India, or do you already have competition when it comes to drones?
With respect to drones, there have been multiple startups, but we have a unique business model. We actually work with enterprise agricultural customers. We build algorithms to actually predict yield, actually count individual plants, and I think since drones have been used so many places in so many different ways, I think we are one of the first companies to build this algorithm and build this entire use case out as is today. So because of which we have got ahead with respect to competition, at least in the agricultural space, I would say.
All right, we get that, Mugilan, and thank you so much for joining us. Well, that clearly is Skylark Drone, a company which tells us on how they are using, apart from other sectors, drones in technology as well, starting right from crops to soil, to seeding, to crop analytics and other things. And they are working with various companies and state governments as well. But with that, it's time for a short break. But stay tuned. We have with us Managing Director of Kisan Craft on the other side to speak more about the use of technology at small and marginal farming areas. Welcome back, and you're watching Commodity Champions, and we are talking about farming and the advent of technology here. So even as we talked about drones right now, but the agriculture sector in the Indian markets really is working much at its basic pace for much of the area. Technology is something that is not so easily accessible to the farmers. Yield and productivity is something that we keep talking about all the time. The irrigation is not up to the mark. What is your sense, Ravi, when it comes to agriculture? How do you see where we stand right now, and what really needs to be done from here?
Well, I mean, yield and productivity is basically the end result of, let's say, deficiencies that we have in our agricultural system in India. And you're definitely right that technology deployment has not been enough. We need to begin with developing new cultivars which are climate resilient. So that means we need to look at seeds which can tolerate the vagaries of the nature. Monsoon is not predictable. It has never been predictable to the extent that, okay, we know that second day it will be there or third day it will be there, and how much and where. While things have been accurate, you still can't control how much rain will fall where. So we need to plan for failure of the nature, and that is something we have not done. So in terms of both seed development, and then we come to water management. Water management is another area where we have really lack basic infrastructure. Only I think about 45% of our arable land comes in the command area of canals. Within that also you would know that canals are, for example, heavily maximum number of canals are not lined. When they're not lined, the water seepage loss is very huge. Water gets withdrawn from the first segment of the canal in excess, so the people who are in the tail end don't get water. And then you still have about 55 to 60% of the farmers who depend on rain. What do you do about that? And then comes the mechanization aspect in terms of conducting the farm operations, beginning from, let's say, land prep to sowing to plantation to crop management, harvesting, post-harvesting. And we have to always remember that we are a small plot farming country. Our maximum 85% of farmers have, in practical, less than 3 acres of land. Within the 3 acres, again, they subplotted. So big machines are not available. So KisanCraft's focus right from beginning has been to focus on farmers. We have been expanding all over our portfolio and just, and we want to have farmers get affordable, appropriate machinery for every stage of the game, and they'll be able to rent it out. Go ahead, please.
That really is interesting because, you know, we were talking to Mugilan sometime back in the first segment really, and while he talked about drones, his approach and market really is different. He's working with governments and he's working with bigger companies. My question to you really is about low-cost agriculture equipment here, because what really comes under that and how much percentage of farmers do you think can actually afford that directly?
Okay, so all of my machines, even my most expensive machines, can pay for themselves in one season. And they do that primarily by reducing their cost of the work that they perform. And second, we expect that the farmers will deploy that machinery on a rental basis as well. We suggest it very heavily. I would say as high as 10% of my customers now are deploying those machines on rental to recover costs.
So when you talk about so, you know, when you talk about R&D and development, that would also mean that the cost of seeds would be increased here. While we are talking about technology, the other part is the affordability and accessibility for the farmers. How do you marry the two?
Okay, so for example, seed development costs. We, KisanCraft as a company, we think that there is definitely at the current prevalent prices of seeds, that, let's say, for example, rice, today you buy, let's say, seeds for, let's say, $40 a kg. If you're buying, I will sell you improved variety, which is aerobic, at 40 rupees a kg. So there will be no cost increase, but your input costs in total, labor costs, your pesticide costs, your seed rate will go down, and you'll still get the same yield. So our focus is very, very conscientious about the farmer's affordability, and ultimately at the end of the day, what is at the yield that he'll get, and therefore what is the retained income of the farmer. We are very, very concerned about that. So that's something we keep in mind, and I think that a lot of people like us can do it.
All right, so coming to the policy point then and the government's push, what do you think is desirable from that? Because we have seen government trying to double farmers' income. MSP hike is one way. There are other pushes in sense of irrigation and so on and so forth that the government has been talking about and doing as well. But when it comes to what you are doing in this space, which is quite important because you're looking at affordable technology in farming, what is desired by you from the government policies right now?
So definitely government is sincere about trying to increase the farmer's income. We have some concerns in the way the policies are being executed. For example, let's say MSP. MSP, I'll just touch very briefly. The government has still not clarified whether it's going to be B2, what is going to be the basis of their cost of cultivation. Is it going to be B2? Is it going to be C2? Is it going to be C star? They have not clarified that. That should be clarified. Now, let's say, for example, policies encouraging R&D or in agriculture. One big problem, for example, we are facing is that even though the relevant act exempts field crop from NBA, NBA Act itself exempts field crops, which are for agriculture, still NBA is insisting that we need to get their approval. It is taking time. One application is taking 8 months for approval. That means I miss out seasons. Then they are charging me per variety that I'm trying to look at. If you access, you have to pay me. And after that, when I commercialize, I have to pay a percentage. We think that this is a policy which needs to be reconsidered, that this is impeding R&D. Similarly, for subsidy disbursement, we believe there is a major lacuna that the government has in the way it is implemented. We understand that agriculture is a state matter, and therefore certain things have to be deferred. But when it comes to, for example, let's say mechanization or fertilizer subsidy and stuff like that, we believe that a lot of things can be done at the central level so that the approvals like validation, okay, this company is okay, this product is okay, can be done at the central level. And the state can determine who the beneficiaries are, how much to do, what to do, and that will reduce the process cost dramatically. Today, government needs to investigate why a lot of subsidy funds are being disbursed at the end of the financial year and not at the beginning of the crop season when the farmer really needs it. And this aids into a lot of difficulty the farmer faces. So R&D impeding impeding the R&D by, let's say, wrong interpretation of NBA Act and implementation has to be looked at. Subsidy disbursement, the way they are doing it, has to be looked at. We encourage DPT. We believe that DPT is great, but this thing has to be looked at. And then promoting the package of practice, adaptations among the farmer is something that the government has to really go on war footing. Our farmers are still using mechanisms that were developed long time ago, like say hundreds of years ago, and they are not adopting new practices. Disbursement of scientific knowledge has to be done. Model farms have to be set up. Private sector can play a lot of role in that if the government allows private sector to cultivate agricultural crops, which right now it's not done.
Well, your point is well taken. This is something that we have been addressing for a longer time on how government perhaps needs to take, and how it is very important to take the private partnership into the programs that they are doing. But my next point really is about the automation or the technology, would you say, as a part right now, or a percentage of farms is used in India. What has been the kind of growth and what is desired? Can you give us a number given the kind of population or the kind of output India comes out with?
Well, if you say automation in true sense of the word, where basically, let's say, we can reduce human intervention, I would say that that's mostly in the processing sector. It is not in the agriculture where you're talking about, let's say, planting, measuring crop health, measuring soil health, or even controlling irrigation with the knowledge of, let's say, soil condition. That is not done. So I would say that automation, if you say in agriculture, not including food processing, not including post-harvest processing, is negligible. And that is something we again need to do, and a lot of that can be done. Again, government will have to really look at some policy changes where, for example, today when I try to get a machine approved for quote-unquote subsidy, because a lot of the sales of mechanization is impacted by subsidy, it takes me anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to get that machine tested by the 4 institutes the government has, because, for example, one of my machines is stuck for 1.5 years because they don't have the equipment. They don't have machines to test the engines, and so there you go. And so suppose I do, like you're talking about automation, so suppose I bring in IoT in that discussion, and I deploy very inexpensive sensors along with my cheap cultivators, which can measure, let's say, soil moisture. They can take pictures of the plant and determine what is the greenness, and that means I can figure out the stress or what is the chlorophyll content and determine what is the inputs that they need. It will take me years before I can get it approved. So, some things the government has to do, but definitely there are a lot of things that you and I have to do as well.
All right. Well, that's one part of it. But the way the country functions right now, I do understand that there are some companies that would rather work with FBOs rather than farmers directly, because FBOs together have some paying power, stronger presentation, etc. When it comes to that, how has that model worked for you? I mean, you said that your equipment is enough accessible, enough affordable that you can work with small or marginal farmers as well. But would you rather not work with FBOs instead?
Well, we have tried to work with FBOs in the past, but we have not had much success. They have their own restrictions on how they operate, and especially when you talk about asset purchases, it becomes a bit of a tricky issue for them as well. So we found it useful, much more meaningful if we reach out to the farmers directly. We still use, let's say, societies and stuff like that for conducting demonstrations or farmer education. But we as a company are focusing on directly educating the farmers. FBO model has not been very successful for us in terms of making sales. And we believe that FBO asset purchase is a problem for them.
All right, we get that. So every aspect that you look at, of course, there are those positives and negatives. Well, with that, though, we have covered all aspects of farming right now, to basic farming, which has been going on for decades right now, where farmers perhaps still depend on monsoons and basic ways of farming, to, of course, affordable technology, and on the other side, on drones as well. So that's a lot that is spread out when you look at farming in India there. But that's all the time that we have on Commodity Champions for you today. Thanks for watching.